Hey, fellow Redditors. I never thought I would be posting something like this, but the events of the past few days have been so bizarre that I just had to share. Brace yourselves for a roller coaster of emotions. I, 27, female, usually work from home and frequently babysit my brother's 33, male, and sister-in-law's kids. They have two kids, Noah, 5, male, and Susie, 8, female. My brother, Mike, has a rather demanding job. He works as a structural mover and has a 40-hour-a-week desk job. His wife, Sandra, works as a nurse, so as you can imagine, both of them frequently need someone to babysit. For some backstory, my brother and Sandra got pregnant when I was in college and used to live at my parents' house. They used to live with us, and I was forced to kind of turn into a live-in maid. My mom, who also had a job at that time, would tell me that since I was free after my classes, the least I could do for the family was look after my brother's kids. My dad didn't like it, but my mom never gave me a choice. I thought I had to look after the kids for only 5 hours until my parents were back home, but as days passed, my mom would continue to ask me to bathe the kids, feed them, or put them to sleep even when she was back home. I didn't blame her because I understood that she was tired too. But I was practically spending 7 to 8 hours looking after the kids, which was not only for free, but it also took up all my time. These kids were young and were an absolute terror. They were extremely hyperactive and throughout the day and would run around throwing toys everywhere. If they demanded something and I didn't listen to them, they would start smashing things around the house and I would have to clean up after them. My thing is, I am not maternal, and I was also very, very young. Being the youngest sibling, I had no idea how to take care of children, especially the ones who would run around screaming and throw tantrums if their demands weren't met. Obviously, I would protest several times to my brother, but he would also tell me that I was always at home and I had nothing better to do anyway. This started to affect my studies, as I was too tired to complete my assignments after putting the kids to bed to do any work. One evening, I had a very important assignment to submit, but Noah and Susie wouldn't leave me alone. They would mess with my books or laptops if I took my attention away from them. I requested them several times to give me 1 hour alone tops, and I put on their favorite kids show to distract them. But Noah started throwing things at my face, like the remote or the pillows on the couch. This would make Susie giggle and in turn encourage Noah to continue with this behavior. I would firmly tell him no, put whatever he threw out of his reach and try to gently explain that we don't throw things. But Noah continued until he threw his drinking mug on my laptop. This spilled water all over the place and my laptop was rendered useless. I couldn't believe the extent of the chaos that unfolded in a matter of seconds. Frustration and exhaustion reached their peak, and I found myself on the verge of tears. This wasn't just a mere inconvenience anymore, it was affecting my academic life and my personal belongings. Desperate to salvage my assignment and maintain my sanity, I took a deep breath and gathered them around, trying to be as composed as possible, and explained how important my studies were and the consequences of their actions. Noah remained defiant, continuing to throw things at my face. I felt beyond frustrated and felt a mix of anger and helplessness. I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands and told Noah that he was on a timeout. I switched off the TV and asked him to sit in a corner facing the wall. Noah's eyes widened and he started to cry, but I didn't listen to him and put him on the chair. Gigi, seeing this, immediately quieted down. When my brother found out about this, he absolutely lost his mind over me putting his son in time out for misbehaving. He started yelling at me that I am not their parent, so I don't have the right to punish his kids. I sternly explained the situation to him, emphasizing the toll it was taking on my academic responsibilities and the irreparable damage done to my laptop. I told him how I needed to get my laptop repaired now because of his kids, so he needs to pay for the damages. My brother started to yell at me that I was being extremely selfish, and kids were going to be kids, so I should not blame them or him, and that I should have known better than to use my laptop in front of them. I told him that I was being forced to look after his kids, which was affecting my studies, so I had no choice but to complete my assignments, which I was babysitting them, as no one else was willing to help me out. My brother yelled at me that we were family and this wasn't a big deal, as they were my niece and nephews. He continued to berate me that if I punished his kids, then they wouldn't like me. I told him that was fine with me, as I didn't need them to like me anyway. I needed them to respect me if they were ever to be in my care. This made him angry, and he said how I was living at my parents' house for free, and other than college, I had no life anyway, so I shouldn't complain about looking after his kids. He also firmly told me that I wasn't allowed to punish them, so I retorted to him that I was done with him and his kids. My brother was shocked hearing my response and tried to backtrack, but I told him that if he wanted me to look after his kids from the next day, he would have to either start paying me or look for an alternate arrangement. I continued to tell him that my services would no longer be available to him and that he was free to find someone else, since he clearly wanted some pushover doormat for his kids to walk all over, and that wasn't going to be me. Later that night, my brother must have told the rest of the family, and my mom decided to barge into my room, demanding that I apologize to my brother and his kids. She insisted that, as a sister, I should be supportive and help my brother without expecting anything in return. However, I wasn't about to back down. I calmly explained that while I loved my brother and his family, my time and efforts were valuable and I deserved fair compensation for the unexpected babysitting responsibilities. As the tension escalated, my dad intervened, rushing to my defense. He reminded my mom that I had a right to be compensated for my time and effort. He pointed out that babysitting wasn't a small favor, but a significant commitment that warranted acknowledgement. The argument between my parents continued to escalate, with raised voices echoing through the house. My sister-in-law finally stepped in. She acknowledged the validity of my point and offered to start paying me the next day and wanted to settle on $50, but I refused, saying that this was too cheap for me to look after their kids for 8 to 9 hours every day. My insistence surprised them, and they questioned the amount I was asking for. Undeterred, I demanded $80 per day, a figure that reflected the time, effort, and stress involved in taking care of the kids. My brother yelled at me that I was being greedy, but I replied that he could try finding someone else then. They begrudgingly agreed. I also demanded that they help pay for my laptop, which their little minion had destroyed, and my sister-in-law agreed. Although my mom continued to express her disapproval, the compromise was reached, and the following day marked the beginning of a new arrangement. I was compensated for my babysitting duties. This arrangement continued until I moved out of my parents' house. At first, my brother would continue to insist that I should keep looking after the kids, but he quickly realized that it was impossible for me, as I stayed at the office for long hours and wasn't back at home until 8 p.m. He had no choice but to find another solution. I was never again troubled for looking after his kids, except on rare occasions, which I was okay with, because at the end of the day, I did love my nephew and niece. Last year, I started working from home permanently, as I got a very nice job and I had the option to switch to work from home. I absolutely love my job, as it pays me well and I can afford to live in an affluent neighborhood. When my brother found out about this, he started to go back to his old ways and would find an excuse every day to leave the kids with me. It's important to note that at this point, I wasn't asking him for any money, nor did he ever offer me, as I thought this was only going to happen for some time. Surprisingly, my brother wasn't thrilled about this and would go to great lengths to avoid confronting me. He resorted to leaving his kids on my doorstep in the morning and would only call me after he had safely retreated into his car, leaving me with no option but to bring the kids inside. In my attempts to reason with someone in the family, I spoke with my sister-in-law multiple times about the situation. However, she insisted that I should be more understanding and help him out since he had been recently promoted in his job. Hence, he was spread thin. I didn't mind looking after my brother's kids once or twice a week, but taking care of them regularly was affecting my job. I realized he wasn't going to change until I taught him a lesson. The next time he left his kids on my doorstep and called me to inform him, I lied and claimed that I wasn't at home. I threatened that I would call the police and CPS on him for abandoning his kids on my doorstep. He started yelling at me that I should just come back home wherever I was, but I told him that if he didn't turn his car back and pick up his kids, he would be answering the police the next time. This made my brother speed back and take his kids. Later, my mom and my sister-in-law called to tell me that my brother had to miss his work as he couldn't find an alternate option, and as a result, his boss shouted at him for missing work. My mom blamed me and told me that I was working from home, so if my brother wanted me to help him out, then it was my family duty to do so. I retorted back to her that if she wanted to play this game, then she should look after his kids because she was retired now and stayed at home the whole day. This seemed to shut my mom up. My sister-in-law told me that she was ready to start paying me like old times, but I told her that this time she would have to pay $100 instead. We bickered, but ultimately she agreed. Since then, I have continued to look after his kids only after my brother pays me up front. It has been several months now, and the children love spending time with me. A few days ago, my brother asked me if I could babysit his kids for the upcoming holidays, as he and his wife were planning on going on a trip with their friends. Usually I would agree, but I already had plans to go to Mexico with my boyfriend and my friends, so I told him that I couldn't do it and he should ask our parents. Hearing this, my brother got upset and told me that I was young, hence I could look after the kids by myself, but our parents are old now and won't be able to keep up with his hyperactive kids. This is essentially true, as my mom has arthritis and my dad has a back problem. I told him that he should then try contacting his friends for help. He got upset and started telling me how he and his wife really needed a break and that I could always take a break later. I told him that this was my first international trip and I was not going to postpone it for his kids. I told him that I wasn't going to cancel my plans as I needed a break from work, and he blew up and started yelling about how I should not even be tired because I just sit at home all day and don't have any kids of my own, at which point I just hung up on him after telling him no once again. So last weekend, I embarked on my trip to Mexico with my boyfriend and my friends. We were having an amazing time and I was letting loose after working hard the entire year. This vacation was well deserved. On my third day, I woke up to 8 missed calls from my brother. Getting worried and concerned for him, I called him back immediately. He picked up the call and sounded panicked, claiming that Susie wasn't doing well and was having trouble breathing. He continued to tell me that she was admitted to the hospital and it was a family emergency. You see, Susie does suffer from asthma, so I panicked hearing him and my brain stopped functioning. My boyfriend sat up seeing my reaction. My brother told me that I needed to come back home and be there for Susie. Feeling all stressed and anxious, I tried to get more info about what was going on with Susie, but my brother was dodgy and didn't give me clear details. With my mind all over the place, torn between family and my plans, I hung up. My boyfriend and friends were supportive, suggesting we should all go back home, but I didn't want to ruin their trip. Worried, I rearranged my plans, booked the earliest flight back, and rushed home, expecting the worst. Throughout the flight home, I tried calling my parents, but they didn't pick up my calls. It was still early morning for them, so I figured they might be sleeping. I asked my brother to come pick me up from the airport, and he immediately agreed. Upon my return, I found my brother waiting at the airport looking sheepish and nervous. I asked him to drive me straight to the hospital so I could see Susie for myself and be there for her. He hesitated before finally admitting that there was no emergency. Instead, he dropped the bombshell that he and his wife were going on their trip with their friends, as he had told me before, and he needed me to babysit their kids. I demanded an explanation, my voice edged with frustration and disappointment. He stammered, trying to justify his actions by saying he thought I wouldn't come back if he told me the real reason. His feeble excuse only fueled my anger. I felt betrayed and used. My concern for Susie turned into resentment for my brother's manipulative tactics. At that moment, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to let this slide. I decided it was time to teach my brother a lesson he would never forget. No more playing games, no more falling for his tricks. I needed him to understand the gravity of his actions, the emotional toll it took on me, and the strain it put on my life. As we drove to his house, a fire burned within me. When we got there, my sister-in-law was outside with luggage, looking all sheepish. I instantly knew she was part of the plan to trick me into coming back home. She hugged me, apologized, and said there was some money for me on their nightstand. Before I could say much, my brother and his wife took off in a hurry to pick up their friends for their trip. Standing there, trying to cool off, I couldn't believe the nerve they had. I was so angry at their attempts to manipulate me and downplay the whole thing. Little did my brother know he was setting himself up for the shock of a lifetime. I was going to take my ultimate revenge and make sure that they would never dare leave me with their children for the rest of their lives. As I stepped inside, I tossed responsibility out the window. When Noah and Susie woke up, I told them that for the next 3 days they were allowed to do whatever they wanted in the house. Noah asked with excitement in his eyes if he could have ice cream in his bed, and I told him why not, and he was free to eat whatever he wanted in his bed. He rejoiced while Susie asked if she could use her mother's expensive makeup to play dress-up, as her mother had asked her not to touch them. I told her that she was free to use whatever she wanted. When my parents called me back, I told them about what happened. My parents had no idea about this and were shocked that my brother had gone to such lengths to force me to babysit his kids. I told them that I had a plan to teach my brother a lesson because of this. My mom curiously asked me what it was, and I told them of my plans to let the kids do whatever they wanted to do at home. Immediately, my mom told me that this was a bad idea and I shouldn't do this to my brother. But my dad, who was clearly angry with my brother, encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to teach him a lesson. I assured my parents that I would allow the kids to do only harmless things, but would never put them in any danger whatsoever. As you can imagine, the kids went crazy and the chaos continued throughout the 3 days. Noah, fueled by excitement, attempted to turn the living room into his personal soccer field. His kicks and throws sent objects flying, and the sound of breaking echoed through the house. Meanwhile, Susie and I tried our hands in baking. For the 3 days, I felt like a child among them and let them do whatever they wanted to do. I watched them with a mix of amusement and satisfaction every time they did something that they would otherwise never be allowed to do. Clearly, they're having the time of their lives, while the house, once orderly and clean, is turned upside down. This was my revenge, and it was sweet. I made sure to capture moments of their masterpieces on camera, knowing that these images would be part of the lasting memory of my brother and sister-in-law. The day my brother and his wife returned, they were completely shocked to see what had happened to the house. Their expressions went from shock to disbelief as they surveyed the aftermath. The once neat and orderly home had transformed into a realm of creative disorder. My brother and his wife went ballistic, shouting at me and demanding an explanation for the chaos they walked into. "What the hell happened here? Why is everything in shambles?" "Oh, hey there, just a little redecorating courtesy of Noah and Susie." "Redecorating? Are you out of your mind? We trusted you to take care of them, not turn our home into a disaster zone." This is unacceptable. Look at the mess. And what did you let Susie do with my makeup? Oh, Susie wanted to use them. She's got quite the talent with makeup, don't you think? Stop playing games. This is not what we agreed upon. Exactly. We didn't agree on anything because you left me standing in your driveway after forcing me to take care of your kids. My brother's face turned several shades of red, hearing this, and he began shouting louder. He told me that I was being unbelievable right now and that they trusted me to look after their kids. I scoffed and told him that trust goes both ways and they had tricked me into cutting my trip short so they could selfishly go on their trip. I firmly told him that the mess the kids had done could be cleaned up, and he should take this as a lesson to never mess with me ever again. My sister-in-law demanded that I repay her money back as I had destroyed the house, so I told her that I took care of the kids for 3 days, and her $150 was the least she could give me for the 3 days. I had looked after her kids. I told them that I was not going to let them push me around anymore. My brother started to say something, but I stopped him and seized the moment to deliver my ultimatum to them. You know what? This is the last time you will ever see me. I'm done being manipulated, taken for granted, and treated like a doormat. The next time you try to dump your kids on me, I will involve the police and get a restraining order on you. Consider this the end. Their faces froze, registering the gravity of my words. I turned around, gathered my bags, and walked out, leaving behind a house in disarray and a family stunned by the unexpected turn of events. Since then, my brother has been calling me, complaining how he and his wife are now stuck cleaning around the house, and the least I could do was apologize to her for being a brat. He's blaming me for everything and continues to say that he didn't do anything wrong by calling me back for my trip. So AITA for teaching my brother a lesson and giving him an ultimatum? Update 1. My mother reached out to me in just a few hours, as I had expected her to do. She demanded that I call my brother and sister-in-law and apologize to them for being so harsh. She continued to tell me that she knew that this would happen, which is why she had tried to discourage me. She told me the only way I could fix things was if I gave back the $150 along with an apology. I was floored hearing my mother supporting my brother again when clearly he was at fault. I wanted to cry when she continued to berate me without considering my feelings. I cut the call short and haven't picked up her calls since. I have talked with my boyfriend regarding all of this, and he believes that I need to take a break from my family, at least for a short while, so I can sort out my feelings. I think he's right, and I plan on making a break from everyone. Update 2. Surprise, surprise, my sister-in-law reached out to me with an apology. A few days after the chaotic incident, my sister-in-law reached out to me with an apology. In a subdued tone, she admitted her mistakes and expressed genuine remorse. She acknowledged that she shouldn't have let her excitement for the trip cloud her judgment, allowing my brother to manipulate and lie to me. She realized the unfairness of taking me for granted and letting her desires blind her to the consequences. Understanding the gravity of the situation, she offered a sincere apology, recognizing the impact of their actions. She then started to plead with me not to punish the kids for their mistakes by emphasizing that they love spending time with me and hoped I would reconsider my stance on babysitting them in the future. However, I remained firm in my decision. I assured her that I wouldn't be babysitting the kids again, reiterating my unwavering stance on the matter. Despite her hesitation, I decisively rejected the idea, refusing to be swayed by manipulation or guilt trips. I stood firm on the boundaries I had set. I told her that while I appreciate her apology, I do believe that actions speak louder than words. Hence, she or my brother shouldn't depend on me in the future for any babysitting duties. The call concluded with a mix of emotions, but I was glad that she did apologize to me. Update 3. It's been a month since I shared the story about what went down with my brother. Things have improved a bit since my sister-in-law apologized. My brother kind of said sorry too, but it wasn't really heartfelt. My dad had a serious talk with him and scolded him for messing with me. I haven't responded to his apology yet. On a brighter note, my boyfriend surprised me with a spontaneous trip to make up for the fact that I had to cut my last trip short. We took a road trip to the countryside, and it turned out to be exactly what I needed. The scenic views and peaceful atmosphere helped me unwind from the chaos of the past month. It felt like a breath of fresh air, a much-needed break from the drama. During the trip, my boyfriend and I explored and enjoyed local cuisine. The laughter and shared moments created new memories, overshadowing the recent family drama. I can't help but feel grateful for the thoughtful gesture. It wasn't just about the trip, it was a symbol of understanding and support. It made me realize that even amid family issues, there are people in my life who genuinely care about my well-being. I still have my brother's half-hearted apology lingering in the back of my mind, but for now, I'm choosing to focus on the positive moments and the kindness that surrounds me. Stay tuned for more stories from our